So to start with, let's talk about different kinds of applications. Colleges have a lot of different options, and we have grown accustomed and had new trends in the last couple of years. It used to be that paper applications were one of the best ways to apply to colleges, but with schools getting greener and greener, now online applications are much more popular. So there's online applications available usually on any college's website. You would click on prospective students or apply now, and you could do that college's application right there. There's other kinds of applications also. A Common App is another type of application. And the Apply Texas app is a great example of that. Apply Texas, if any of you have heard of that, is one application that many schools in Texas have worked together to build that meets all of our requirements. So all public institutions in Texas use that application, and many private institutions. Baylor's one of those institutions. So if you knew you were applying to several schools and wanted to do them at the same time, that would be a great example of a common application that you could use. There's also a common application for United States schools. Some of the highest level universities in America use that common application together. Other types of applications include pre-populated applications. So if you got an application in the mail or maybe in your email from a certain university, typically that means that they're very interested in you applying. They used their internal data, they went out to you, they've probably met you before, and they're sending you that application to say, we're gonna make this really easy on you, and you just need to complete a few more steps and send it back to us. So if you get a pre-populated application in the mail or in your email, then it's a great way to apply to a university. There also could be fees with applying to different colleges. With the Apply Texas app, there is a fee, but I'd like to let you all know that there is something called a fee waiver. And if you worked with your school counselor, if you felt like financially that your family was in a position where you needed some assistance with college applications, your high school counselor can talk to you about how to apply for a fee waiver. Other universities will waive fees if you do a campus visit, or like at Baylor, our application is absolutely free. Next, we should talk about standardized tests. I know probably all of you have heard of SAT or ACT, but there are some distinctions between those two tests. SAT is a standardized test that's supposed to measure what you've learned in school and how well you can use critical thinking and problem-solving skills. So the SAT tests 3 different areas: math, critical reading, and a writing section. Most universities just use the critical reading and the math components when evaluating you, but it's good to know that you would take all 3 components, and some schools do use all 3. So that test does use those 2 areas, but it also is testing how well you analyze, how well you solve problems. And that's different than the ACT, which has 4 components. Those sections are English, math, reading, science, and an optional writing section. For some students, they feel like the material that they've learned in high school is tested a little bit to their advantages with the ACT, but you really don't know which test you'll do better on until you try both of them. And one tip that we can't say enough is that you really should prepare ahead for both the SAT or the ACT. We definitely recommend that students, by the time they're juniors, take both tests, and that you get used to both of the different kinds, and whichever one you test best in, that you do that more often. A lot of schools do something called super scoring. And that's when you take the highest components of different times that you've taken the test and put them together. So at Baylor, we do that. If you took the SAT 3 times and 1 time was your highest math, and then the 3rd time was your highest critical reading, we'd put those together to give you the optimal score. That's the benefit in taking the test more than once and turning in all of your scores to whichever schools you're interested in. But again, if you're better at ACT or SAT, you want to make sure that whichever test you're taking is playing to your strengths. Let's talk about the different types of admissions too. This can get kind of confusing. So a lot of schools do something called rolling admissions, and that's when they'll open their application, and then as soon as they open it, they start reviewing files. I was at a conference last week with admissions directors from all over the United States, and I met some schools that have already been sending out acceptances. So they had rolling admissions, and then they started at the end of September to admit students. So those kind of schools will just roll along through the year and accept students until they feel like their freshman class has no spaces available. That's different than just a regular admission, which would be a one-time deadline that a lot of schools have, usually later on in the spring, and they would collect all their applications and then review all the students, choose the students that were the best candidates for their school. There's also something called early admission or early decision, and those are very different. Early admission is a new trend where a lot of universities will have an early deadline. So like I said, a regular admissions deadline is usually in the spring. An early admissions deadline tends to be like November 1st or November 15th. And if you did that deadline, then you would find an answer, usually before Christmas, as if you got accepted or if you didn't. That gives you the freedom to apply again to another school regular decision if you're interested in it. Early decision is a binding agreement with another school. So if you knew that hands down, if you got into this college, then you would go there, then you could fill out an early decision agreement. It usually means that you won't apply anywhere else until regular admission. So you really want to read the fine print, and most of all, my best advice for you is to get to know any admissions counselor or enrollment officer at the universities that you're interested in. Each one of you for any college in America probably has a territory manager assigned to you. And so you would want to get to know your personal admissions counselor who would guide you through the entire process at that school and let you know all of the options that they have available. There's a few more terms that I should throw out there. One is your official transcript, which would come directly from your high school to your college. Usually, colleges aren't going to accept unofficial transcripts, which would mean that the student touched them in any way. So we have different systems with the state of Texas where they could just send it directly from a public high school to a university, and you want to talk to your registrar about that. Many colleges use your class rank. We're looking at essays, we're looking at recommendations. There's something called a wait list. This is all in your glossary and more. So if you had questions about any of that, you could ask me afterwards. I want to review, starting with your junior year, some of the timeline things that you should be looking at. Really, in the fall, as I said, your junior year, it's a great time to be prepping for those standardized tests. So I'd recommend that you're studying. There's a few test prep courses that you can take. Sometimes they end up being pretty pricey. But truthfully, a book from the bookstore and you studying is also a great way to go. Also, the SAT and ACT websites have tips of the day, and they have questions that they could email you, and they have full-length tests that you can practice on, all for free. So that's another great resource. In the fall, you also want to start considering what kind of school would be best for you. Do you want to go to a large school? Would you like a private school? Do you want a school focused on sports, athletics, Division I? Or do you like schools that are focused more on the arts? What kind of major would you like to study? What kind of career path do you think you'll take? Start talking with your high school advisors and counselors about that, and then also just studying different online resources for different kinds of college to make a long list of schools that you think fit into your interests. In the spring of your junior year, it's definitely time to hit the road. Spring break would be a great time to go on a road trip with your family, to go visit a few other schools. Most parents probably wouldn't want to admit it, but 90% of college students make their final decision on a campus visit as to if it just feels right or not for them to choose that school. And you do certainly want to find a college that feels like home. So you really need to visit to see beyond a brochure and a website if that's the right place for you. In the spring, again, you'll continue taking your SAT or ACT tests, and you definitely want to stay focused on your grades because most colleges are going to be reviewing at least the first 6 semesters of your high school grades to do an admissions decision, and you don't want to let those slide at the end of your junior year. And then for your senior year, it's really time to start narrowing down that list of schools you built your junior year. So you'll want to be almost ready to submit applications during that summer. I know for Baylor, we open our application in August. So a lot of universities do that. And like I said, a lot of schools have a November 1st deadline. And if you just have a few quick months there and you're focused on your senior year, you don't want to miss an early deadline. So have your resumes that you're getting prepared. Use a Microsoft Outlook template for that. Those are free on your computer. You want to make sure that you're visiting your schools again. You want to have your paperwork in place for your application, letters of recommendation from your favorite academic teachers. You're just going to start collecting all those and then trying to make every deadline that you can. In January and February, it's time to really focus on your taxes and your FAFSA, which we'll talk more about in the next section. And then by the late spring, it's time to make that final decision. Most colleges in America do require that by May 1st, you put in an enrollment deposit and you make your final decision as to where you're going. So to give you a checklist, there's also one on your handout. You're going to want to make sure that you have a complete application and that you find out from your admissions counselor what that means to have a completed application at each school. It's always a little different. You're going to want to take your test and remember that super score tip that I gave you. For your high school transcripts, you're going to want to request those as early as possible. Our first deadline is November the 1st. So October the 30th is not the time to go to your registrar and ask them for a transcript to get sent to Baylor, because they are very frustrated by how many students are doing that. We also would probably recommend that you get your letters of recommendation together, any short answer or essay questions that you could use for different colleges. And then you're going to want to plan ahead. And it really does take a few weeks to do a proper college application. So don't ever wait until the week of or at all the night before to send in your application. Finally, a few of my very favorite tips. I think as a family, it takes a lot of organization to get a student into college. And some families like to keep that all organized by using a different email address that you could create just for college application process. Other families have a binder where you collect all the mail you're getting, you highlight deadlines, and you make sure you don't miss anything. You could have a calendar in the binder, but I would definitely recommend that as a family, you prepare your own system. I also can't recommend enough that you do research and that you visit each school that you think that you'd want to attend. Like I said, you really want to have that feeling when you visit a school that you're in the right place and that this is where you want to call your academic home. Because it's not just those 4 years, it's all the homecomings and the people that you meet and the relationships that you build that really does change your life from that point forward. And then thirdly, and this is a pretty big deal because it's in the news almost every week nowadays, but colleges all have a sticker price. I like to think of that as like if you're car shopping, it's the price on the window. But very few people actually pay a sticker price. I know we say here at Baylor with 15,000 students, we actually have 15,000 different prices. And so you'll want to make sure that you don't narrow a school off your list just based on price alone. It's going to be the spring after you do your financial aid pieces that you really find out what it will cost your family to attend that school. So just keep an open mind. And as you go through the process, you'd want to narrow a school down at the end after you know a final price. And lastly, my best tip for parents out there is that you really should think of this as your entire family being a team, but that your student should be the captain of the team. And as an admissions director, you have no idea how often I hear from parents instead of students. Today I got a thank you note that I know a mother wrote and not her daughter, but she wrote it as if her daughter wrote it. So just know that we know better. I know what 18-year-old handwriting looks like and what 50-year-old handwriting looks like. And truthfully, we want your students to lead the ship. So if you can think of it as we're all together, we're all a support system, but someone's got to be the captain, and it should be your student. This is just a big time to start letting go and letting them direct what's going to happen for the next 4 years, and it really trains them to take control and to make that decision. So next, I'd like to pass the mic to Mr. Amin Korzal from Financial Aid.
All right. Well, a very good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. As Jessica said, my name is Amin Korzal. I'm the Assistant Director of Financial Aid Counseling here at Baylor, and it's truly a pleasure to be with you here this evening. I hope that you learn a great deal. This evening I'm going to be talking to you about merit and academic scholarships and what you can do to better your chances to get the most in these types of programs. So starting out, I just wanted to go over kind of an explanation of what scholarships and grants are. Scholarships and grants are funds that do not have to be repaid. This is money that is either given to you by the university or a donor or somebody else to help you make college a reality. And the truth is there are a lot of different types of scholarships out there, and there's a lot of money available to help you pay for college. These are definitely the best type of funds to get because they do not require to be paid back. So where can you start the process of getting an academic scholarship? Many colleges are going to be looking at your academic performance how you did in your high school. So it's important that you have strong test scores on either your SAT or your ACT. Jessica talked to you a little bit about the differences on those two. It's also important to have a good high school rank. At Baylor, we look at both the test scores and the high school rank when it comes to awarding our academic scholarships. So be sure that you try and keep a good rank as well as try to do your best on the SAT or the ACT. It also helps if you're involved in leadership roles in your school or in your community. So if you are involved in charity work or something like that, definitely continue that and continue performing those duties because that'll help you when it comes time to apply for these scholarships. So like I mentioned, grants and scholarships are the best type of funds because you don't have to pay those back. That's why many times these type of scholarships are listed under gift aid. They're gifts to you. And many times these funds are awarded based on a number of criteria. For example, financial need. Jackie's going to come up later and talk to you about the FAFSA, but the FAFSA will determine your financial need, and so colleges will award you need-based scholarships based on the results of the FAFSA. I mentioned academic. There's also artistic and athletic abilities, so if you have those, that could definitely help your chances. And there's also a number of unusual criteria, which I'd like to tell you about. For example, if you're creative and you can create a prom dress out of duct tape, there's a scholarship for you at the Duct Tape Corporation. So these are true scholarships. I'm not making these up. These are actual scholarships. If you're a tall person, or a tall student, there are scholarships available for you as well. And you can find those. This one, for example, is from the Tall Clubs International at tall.org. So you don't have to be as tall as Yao Ming, but that's a start. There's also a scholarship for duck calling. So if you are qualified in duck calling, there's a scholarship out there for you. So definitely pursue those if you have those skills. Scholarships involve more than just money. These organizations that give the awards are focused on more than just giving away those funds. They want to eliminate barriers to college success, and many times these organizations are trying to foster a community of their recipients. So more than just getting money for college, you're also going to be investing in a lifelong experience and making lifelong friends just by nature of the scholarship that you're receiving. I wanted to show you a couple of websites where you can look for scholarships, and I'll leave this on here so that you can write it down. Fastweb.com is by far the biggest scholarship search engine out there. It'll ask you some questions about yourself. It'll find out what your activities are, what your interests are, and then it'll come back with scholarships that meet your criteria. So fastweb.com is a good one, but there's also a couple more: schoolsoup.com, scholarships.com, scholarshipsandgrants.us, and collegefortexans.com for Texas residents. So be sure to check out these websites to start your scholarship search. A couple of other places where you can look: your high school guidance counselor can also be a good resource. She or he may post information in their office regarding scholarships, and you'll also want to check in your school bulletin or newspaper and see if there's any that you can apply for that way. There's also a couple of books, scholarship books, that are available through Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com that you can purchase or you can check out. And I've listed a few of those on there. But the main thing is just to not be afraid to do the legwork and not be afraid to ask and to seek out as many as you can. So when can you start looking for these scholarships? You can start looking for them right away. It's never too early to be looking for scholarships. Many of them have deadlines throughout the year, so the sooner you start searching, the better off you'll be. And since these scholarships tend to be quite competitive, you definitely don't want to wait too long because those scholarships may have already been awarded. Also, don't forget that even once you're enrolled at the college that you choose to attend, you can still be looking for those scholarships. So the search doesn't end once you start. You can continue looking for those once you've enrolled at the university. At Baylor, we have a number of departmental scholarships that are awarded by the individual departments at our university that we award to our students, and things like that are going to be what you want to keep your eyes open for. So after you've located the scholarships that you're interested in, you'll need to submit an application for each one, typically. And some of those applications may require a short essay, letter of recommendation, high school transcripts. And sometimes, if you become a finalist, some of those donors will ask for you to come in for an in-person interview. They want to know, why should we give you our scholarship? And you just want to be prepared for that, to put your best foot forward and definitely increase your chances of getting that award. So just be prepared to do some legwork after you've been selected. Once you've been awarded the scholarship, the sponsor will hold the money until you've enrolled in college. The university will also hold the money until you've enrolled, and then they will either send the check to your student account or they'll send it directly to you. It depends on how your organization is set up. And there may be some additional paperwork that has to be completed for the university to let them know that an outside scholarship is coming. So be sure to check with the financial aid office at the university you plan to attend, because there may be some additional forms that have to be filled out before those will appear on your account. You want to be sure to keep up the good work while you're at school. Some of these scholarships are renewable, which means you can continue to get them every year that you're in college. But often, you'll have to maintain a certain GPA in order to get those scholarships renewed. Sometimes the donor may ask for you to send them a progress report to let them know how you're doing. So it's important that you keep up the good work, that you don't let your grades fall too short, because that may involve the scholarship being taken away. So we definitely don't want that. Definitely keep up the good work and do your best at all times. The scholarship may also require that you get involved in some kind of extracurricular activity, community service, a leadership role. So just be prepared to do some additional things if the organization requires you to do so. And finally, I just want to end with this quote from Benjamin Franklin. He said, "If a man empties his purse into his head, no one can take it from him. An investment in knowledge always pays the highest return." Thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your college night, and we'll be here to answer questions at the end. Thanks a lot.
Hello, I am Jackie Adler. I'm Director of Financial Aid at TSTC, and I want to talk to you about the term that you've heard from all three of the presenters, I believe, so far, called FAFSA. FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. The first word in that, of course, is free. Now, many of you may have already been approached, or if not, you probably will be approached by some companies that want you to pay them for them to provide a service to you where they will fill out the FAFSA for you, or where they will apply for scholarships for you. Be very leery of any kind of offers that you get from any of these companies, especially if they're making some promises that sound too good to be true, because you have heard a lot about what you can do to apply for scholarships. As far as filling out the FAFSA form, don't be intimidated by it. Several years ago, the FAFSA was a pretty intimidating process. It was a thick application that you had to fill out. There were page after pages of instructions. Now, it's not bad at all, seriously. Now you go online to FAFSA.gov, and it walks you through the process. It is extremely easy these days to fill it out. But if you get hung up and need any assistance, there is not a college around that will not help you. There is also online help. And we're very lucky here in McLennan County that anybody who is going to McLennan County High School will get a visit in that high school from Robbie Stabenow or one of her staff members with the Waco Foundation. And they're going to provide assistance to the student or the parents in filling out that FAFSA. Now, as you heard earlier, this concept about the team and the student should be the captain of that team, believe me, I believe that. But I can tell you 90% of the calls that we get are probably from parents in the financial aid office, because the parents are the ones that are steering the ship when it comes to applying for financial aid. Seems like especially for sons, I don't know what it is, but with sons, believe me, that mama is out there doing that FAFSA for them. And mama's trying to help, and mama is helping, but what happens a lot of times is that, mama's got several students, and mama might put in the right social security number for that student, and she might not. Sometimes she's doing the application for John, she puts in Susie's social security number. Or maybe she gets their date of birth mixed up because she, you know how it is, mom's got a lot going on. So when you fill out that FAFSA, whoever does it, mom, dad, student, hopefully that student is sitting there at least, knowing what's going on. Make sure that the name is the legal name, that the social security number is correct, and that the date of birth is correct. Because if those three things are not accurate, that application is going to get rejected. And more information is going to have to be submitted. So you want to make sure that those things are correct. So number one, you want to be on the free website, FAFSA.gov. If you go to FAFSA.com, you're going to be paying some money. You go to FAFSA.gov, you do it as early as possible after January the 1st of your student's senior year in high school. Now, if you want to do it their junior year, that's fine. Just to practice, to see what kind of process it is, and to get an idea of what your family contribution is going to be. Now, you may be thinking, what's family contribution? Well, when you fill out this FAFSA form, you're going to be putting income information on there for the student and for the parents. And you're going to send that information to up to 10 schools. Now, hopefully you're going to have it, narrowed down by the time that the student is a senior, because you're not going to fill the FAFSA out in most cases until, January 1st of the senior year. So you should have it narrowed down pretty well. But maybe there are several schools that you're still, thinking about. Maybe one of them is a high-cost school and you're not sure if you can afford to go or not. Fill out the FAFSA, put on there, your top schools, and see what kind of offer you get from those schools. Because as you heard before, don't let that initial sticker shock scare you off. There's a possibility that you will be able to afford it. You're not going to know until you apply for admission at that school and until you apply for financial aid. So do this as early as possible after January the 1st. You do need to file your taxes first so that you will have that income information. It's a lot easier now to fill out the FAFSA because, for one thing, when you're completing the FAFSA form now, you have the option, instead of typing in that information from your income tax and maybe putting in the wrong information, there is now an option where you can use something called IRS data retrieval. And that will allow you to, within the FAFSA application, request that your information be imported from your tax return directly into the FAFSA. If your student has filed their taxes, they can do that too. And then that way you know that the information that's been put on the application is correct. And if your student's record gets selected for verification where you have to prove that everything's correct, you're not going to have to go to the Internal Revenue and get tax transcripts to turn into the school. So it really does make the process, a whole lot easier for you. But you can't do that unless you file your taxes early, and it usually takes at least a couple of weeks from the time that you file your taxes until you can go online and do the IRS data retrieval. Now, you may be wondering, why do I need to do it early? Any student who is eligible for a Pell Grant is going to get the amount of Pell Grant that they're eligible for, regardless of when they fill out their FAFSA. They're going to get their student loans regardless of when they fill out the FAFSA. Of course, if they fill it out too late, the money's not going to be there when the bill's due for them to start school, so that's going to be a problem. So that's one reason to fill it out early. The other reason to fill it out early is that with other types of financial aid, such as federal work study or state work study where the student can work on campus, different types of other grants from both the state and from the federal government, those funds are something called campus-based, where each school is just given an allocation of funds. And we have to give those funds to students who meet certain eligibility criteria, but we don't get enough to award all the students. One example at our college is something called the Texas Grant. That is something that if your student has a family contribution of $4,000 or less, and they have graduated from high school with more than the standard high school curriculum, they can be eligible for a Texas grant at any state-supported school in the state of Texas. At our school, it's worth a minimum of $1,250 per semester. At a community college, it's worth less. At a four-year university, it's worth much more. We have at least 100 students for this fall semester that are as eligible as the students that we've given those funds to, but we're out of funds. I think we were able to fund probably people who filled out the FAFSA up through maybe the middle of June. After that, we ran out of money for Texas grants. Now, if we have some students who don't come back to school with us in the spring, some of that money will be reallocated, so we can, give a few more. We can award a few more students then. But that's why you want to apply early, because we have seen situations. In fact, we had some twins on our campus who were both eligible for Texas Grant. Their income, neither of the boys worked. The parents' income, of course, was the same. When we got their applications last year, one of those students applied, I think, back in February or March. The other one didn't apply until in July. He didn't know he was going to go to college. So one of the brothers got the Pell Grant, and he got a student loan. The other one got, because we got his application early, he got a Pell Grant, he got a supplemental grant from the federal government, and he got the Texas Grant. He didn't have to have a student loan. So that's the benefit of applying early. What you want to do is fill it out, make sure everything looks correct, double check it before you send it off or before you hit submit. At the time that you're submitting it, you're going to have a PIN number. And that's something you can go ahead and get now if you don't already have one. If you've already put a student through college, you probably created a PIN number at that time, the parents. At least one of the parents will have to have a PIN number to sign the FAFSA. And the student has to have a PIN number. When you have that PIN number, and you can now select your own. Be sure that you remember that PIN number because you will have to use it each year. If your student applies for a student loan, they're going to have that PIN number in order to apply for that student loan. And if you parents wind up applying for a parent loan, you're going to have your PIN number. So you could always get your PIN number even now, because that is something that you're going to need come January the 1st. Whenever you finish your application and you submit it, it will tell you at that point what your expected family contribution is. And that number, don't let it scare you too much, but that's what the government is saying, that based on your student's income, your income, and any asset information that you've put on there, that they would expect you to be able to spend per year to send your student to school. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to have to write a check to the school for that amount. But what will happen is that each school is going to have something called a cost of attendance. They're going to calculate that based on their tuition and fees, an allowance for room and board, housing, depending on if the student is going to live on campus, off campus, or with parents. They'll have an allowance in there for personal expenses and transportation. They're going to take that number, and the number is going to be different at every school in the state. Of course, a private university, like Baylor, TCU, they're going to be up at the top. A technical college such as us, we're going to be about down there. Community college is going to be below that. And then your state-supported institutions will, be in the middle in there. You take that number, from that you subtract the EFC, expected family contribution. Whatever is left over is how much financial aid, how much your unmet need is at that school, and that will determine how much you can receive at that school. If you're qualified for a Pell Grant, and that's going to be the neediest students, they will be able to get that the same amount of Pell Grant regardless of what school they attend. Other types of aid are going to be limited, or going to vary per school, okay? So that's about all the time that we have for this part of the presentation.